Welcome to Your Yes-Filled Life. I'm your host, Brenda Winkle, educator, healer, speaker, guide, and fierce advocate for your yes. I help sensitive and successful men and women find, reclaim, and live from their full embodied yes. Through empowering you to understand your energetic hygiene, establish healthy boundaries, and heal your nervous system, you'll be able to create your yes-filled life and move through your days with more freedom, more ease, and more joy. You'll hear inspiring stories of people who found their full-bodied yes, thought leaders who pursued their own dreams and are living life on their terms, and learn new ways to find the courage, joy, ease, and freedom to more fully step into your yes-filled life. Say no to the good so you can say yes to the great. Join me on this journey to discover your yes-filled life. Whether you're looking to break free from the golden handcuffs, start a new business, find your dream job, or simply live with more intention and mindfulness, I've got you covered. Let's explore the possibilities together and make your dreams a reality. Ready? Let's do this. Let's get you to your yes-filled life. Hello, and welcome back to Your Yes-Filled Life. I'm your host, Brenda Winkle. Today, I am recording this intro as I sit in my brand new office, and I am looking out my window at the beautiful fall colors. I unfortunately left my microphone back at the Airbnb, but I don't think you'll mind because today's podcast episode is so good. We have Jenny Scholl on the podcast, and you are going to love this conversation. You're going to feel inspired, and it's probably going to answer a lot of questions that you may have carried about spirituality and the intersection of feminine embodiment and how you can access your spiritual traditions and practices and also enjoy life, finding pleasure in the day to day. You are in for such a treat. And I'll tell you about Jenny in just a minute. But before I do that, I want to let you know about a brand new masterclass that I'm hosting on December 4th. It's developed so that you can discover the clarity and confidence to prioritize yourself without the guilt. It's called Boundaries That Energize You and Bring Balance to Your Life. It's perfect for you if you're feeling overwhelmed by the constant demands for attention and time. It's for you if you're feeling exhausted from overcommitting. And it's for you if you're unsure about how to set boundaries that feel really good and nourishing and supportive and connective. You're going to gain the clarity and confidence as you learn simple strategies to say no with ease and yes to yourself. You're going to have so much more bandwidth to say yes to the things you actually want to say yes to. You're going to have a chance to reclaim your energy, stopping the energy drains that leave you feeling depleted. And you're going to leave with immediate action steps where you get to walk away with tools to feel balanced and empowered right away. This is a 60-minute live workshop with a mini breathwork drop-in. I'll be sharing guided exercises to help you connect with your energy so that you can identify the energy leaks and learn how best to plug them for you. You're going to have practical boundaries to set boundaries that stick. This is a live event and you can reserve your spot for $22. I am not hosting this masterclass as a free masterclass, and here's why. I want you to set a boundary for yourself, protecting this time and this space for you. So I want you to have a little bit in the game. The $22 is to help support you as you set this boundary. When you have something that you've given to attend, my hope is that you'll carve out this time and protect it just for yourself. So reserve your spot now by going to brendawinkle.com/boundaries. Now, this masterclass is for you if you're a high-achieving professional entrepreneur or light worker and you're ready to step into your next level, but you want to do it protecting your health and honoring your relationships. And it's for you if you're ready to make a change in how you feel and how you show up for you. Learn more and register at brendawinkle.com/boundaries. Now, let's get into a little bit about today's episode with Jenny Scholl. Jenny Scholl is the creator and host of the Mystic Bloom podcast, where she guides seekers through the mystical aspects of the divine feminine and spiritual exploration. Her work blends ancient wisdom with contemporary insights, creating a sacred space for soulful discovery and embodiment. With a focus on Christian mysticism, energetics, and the sacred feminine, Jenny helps individuals awaken to their inner knowing and connect deeply with the divine. Through her teachings and podcasts, she empowers others to balance spirituality and embodiment, fostering pathways for profound transformation. I am so pleased to introduce you to Jenny Scholl. Hey, Jenny.
Hi.
I'm so excited for this. I
Mm.
could have hit record 10 minutes ago. Um, I'm so glad you're here.
Oh, me too. I love you. I love being with you.
I
It
love
feels so
you.
nice.
It does feel so nice. I mean, we can just jam, and that's what we're gonna do. So
Perfect.
I have a question just to kind of kick things off. Is there anything that you did or didn't do that's led to your yes-filled life?
Ooh, that's a great question. Um, my yes-filled life. It's funny, it's very pertinent question because I feel like our lives sometimes come in like waves and cycles, or I know we can touch on like hero's journey where you're in the cave, out of the cave. And I'm in one of these spots again where I'm like looking at like, oh, hold on a second. Did I accidentally get trapped in a wave of energy that wasn't my own?
Mm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Did I get really excited about something? Did I want to spend a lot of time with my family? Like all beautiful things. But I think what really led to at least the first version and the big like breakdown, breakthrough of the yes filled life was looking at that question. Because it happened at a time where I kind of committed to someone else's dream because I knew I could help and I knew I could do it.
Uh-huh.
And like, I'm right there. I'm an executor. We got this. And then when it kind of broke down, I was like, wait a second. Did I just spend all of those years working towards someone else's dream?
Mm,
So it's this little bit of like, and I went through and I'm kind of in now too, like a little bit of like grief of that. Like, oh, wow, like I'm so grateful for everything I've done. A little bit of grief that like maybe it was aligned to someone else's path and a really good chance for me to go, okay, well then what do I want?
mm.
Like, what do I want? And how do I get it? And how do I keep like saying yes to my dreams?
Oh my gosh, I relate to this on so many levels. First of all, as an empath, it's so easy for me, I'll speak for myself. It's so
Mhm.
easy for me to think that these strong feelings, these strong dreams, these ideas are mine because they're so deeply embedded in my body.
And there's a resonance with something in there,
Yes.
right? You're like,
Mhm.
oh, yes, I believe in this too.
Yeah, exactly. So when you believe in it, it's not in contrast or conflict
Mm-mm.
with your values, and then someone so excited about it. It's very confusing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. So I think if anything, to answer your question maybe a little more succinctly, I think it's taking the time to pause
Mhm.
and almost to do like an audit of where have I been spending my time, my energy, my money? Does it feel good? Does it align with what I want?
Mm.
And
Mhm.
if not, taking the time to go, okay, well then what do I want?
Oh, I love this. I've been doing something similar, slowing down my travel,
Mm.
pausing, and really allowing slash sort of almost forcing, but mostly allowing myself to sit in any discomfort. And sometimes if I'm really fast, if I'm really in motion, I can pretend the discomfort's not there. But when I slow down, if there's any crunchiness, it becomes very evident.
Oh my gosh, that is so true. And that's exactly what actually just happened to me physically. I just spent this week getting sick. It's because I allowed myself to slow down.
Mm,
I've just
mhm,
been like pushing through, pushing through, pushing through, crunk the vitamins, shoot myself up with vitamins, let's go. And the same kind of thing, like the moment I gave myself rest, my body was like, oh, hey, girl, you need a lot more of this, actually.
Hmm. Yeah.
And so it like happens almost like at every energetic level of like when we're moving too quickly to sense what's going on, it gets louder and louder and louder
Hmm.
versus when we can like sit and listen, then it
Yeah.
almost feels like silly. You're like, oh, duh, that's what I need.
Right. But I don't know if I would love to know what your experience is in this because for me, sometimes I'll get sick, but more often it's emotional
Mhm.
where I'll have this breakdown before I have the breakthrough. And the breakdown for me looks like sometimes I literally cannot stop crying. I
Mhm.
just am crying and sad, and I can articulate that I'm sad. And I even have some awareness around why. And yet the breakthrough's not happening quite yet. It's on the other side. How does that manifest
Oh,
for you?
and one of my friends calls that divine discomfort area, where you're like, ooh, because it's like like you're on the cusp of something,
Mhm.
and it's
Yeah.
this beautiful like void place sometimes. Oh, I know it so well because there's a part of me that's like, all right, let's just get through this. Like, come on, get to the other side. And I think there's so much magic and beauty of like sitting in there
Mhm.
and really spending time with that discomfort and like what is happening.
Did you have to learn how to sit in that discomfort, or did that come naturally?
The first time I was forced into it, I would say, or like I didn't know to listen for it. I didn't know the signs of it. So it's almost like when you push your body past the point of exhaustion or something,
Mhm. Mhm.
and then you know not to do that again. And so you like learn, right? And the same
Mhm.
I think happens with our emotional body, where we don't know until we've almost like crossed the line, but then we can start to feel it, and it's like, oh, we can tell each time we're nearing the line. And that has helped me to be like, oh, oh, I'm getting at least a little glimmer of this same feeling. It's time to slow down. It's time to go within. It's time to journal, like whatever the
Mhm.
process is calling for.
Yeah. How do you recognize what it is that you really want to do or what's calling to you?
That is a great question. Um, I just, I'll come back to the answer, but I did just create a little chat GPT hack for myself with this question
Mm.
because I discovered as a generator in human design with the sacral center that I get like full body yes, no hits on
Mm.
like yes, no questions. So
Oh.
sometimes this like, what do you want is so big. I could go like 100 different directions. I actually freeze a little bit. I'm like,
Mhm.
I don't know. I could use this life or this life or this life. I could be happy in all of them.
Mhm.
So I told ChatGPT this about myself and I asked it to ask me yes, no questions. And I asked the answers to those questions to like kind of drill down and do a direction. And a little hack of this too was because it was a machine and it wasn't like a person that I was tied to their emotions.
Mhm.
I was like really paying attention to my full body yes nos with no attachment to maybe
Oh
what that
my
other person
gosh.
thought I should be doing.
This is brilliant.
Oh my,
This
it
is
was a,
brilliant.
and then I had it write a summary for me, and then I had it write it like it already happened. So I have these like beautiful things of like what I've done in 2025 or like the kind of partner that I met. Because I even too, everyone asks me, like, what do you want in a future partner? I'm like, well, this could be that, could be this. And I like
Mhm. Mhm.
had it ask me these yes, no questions until I got closer and closer and closer and closer to the answer.
Oh my goodness. I'm going to try this. I'm literally going to try this because I'm a
Oh,
manifesting generator with an emotional
yeah.
authority. And so, one of the things that had led to a most recent breakdown that I'm almost to the breakthrough about was, can I trust my emotional body? Can I trust what it is that I actually want? Because what I want, what really feels good, I had this story that it was going backward, or that it was weak, or that like somehow there was merit in there being a little bit of a struggle. And when I revealed that to myself by diving into my human design with our mutual friend Mars, I was taken aback by it. And that caused my My whole system just froze up with, oh my gosh, what if I just allowed myself to do the thing that feels really good?
Mm.
And then there was a
That's
lot to
amazing.
unpack.
Yeah, right? Like, what if that, like, those yes and no's are like your compass?
Hmm. What if it just gets to be that easy?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
And that's a good muscle because sometimes it doesn't make logical sense.
Most of the
Or
time.
sometimes, yeah, or someone's going to ask you questions and you're like, oh man, am I like, do I have to like defend against my decision? Like, no.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, and to your
But
point with
yeah.
like you mentioned, 100 different lives, like it could be 100 different lives. I am in a current situation with this full-time travel that I have the buffet in front of me. And I could choose literally any kind of life
Mm,
anywhere. And I think, in contrast to what I originally thought, I thought that that would be expansive. And now I'm realizing that I actually want some more grounding.
mm,
Yeah,
yeah. Which is like a beautiful but perhaps unexpected learning of this journey.
totally. There's been a lot. There's been a lot of
Yeah. Well,
unexpected
because we
learning.
learn through contrast. Actually, this is what prompted this chat GPT thing because I realized when something would happen, I was very clear on my nose. Like my body would be like a no.
Yeah.
And then it would align to that no, and whatever I didn't want would actually fall away. And I was like, this is powerful. And then I was
Mhm.
like, how could I do this with the yes? Because
Yeah.
a lot of those people, a lot of questions that were being asked with me were so open-ended. It
Right.
wasn't like, hey, do you want this? And I could say yes. It was like, what do you want? From what you're saying, the buffet of life.
Hmm.
And I was like, oh, I almost like need menu choices because then I can say yes or no.
That's right. Or even not any of those, something different.
Right.
But
Yeah,
just
no, no, no,
having,
no, no.
I think they call that the responding in human
Mm.
design. It's
Yeah, I
and
have a
so
sacral response.
mine's an emotional response. So I need to respond emotionally. And if I'm in my head about it, I have a way of going around that emotional
Mm.
response, and then I can get myself into misalignment.
Ooh,
Yeah,
this is so fun to like learn these things about ourselves.
I know. It really is. So I'm curious, you have a new podcast that just launched called
Oh yeah.
Mystic Bloom, and
Yeah.
it is so good. And
Oh.
I'm curious how that landed in your body.
Mm.
How was that born?
That was so Mystic Bloom itself has had its own like essence, its own life cycle. I've really been treating it differently than any other like project per se that I've had, where I've kind of just been letting it lead and like not putting a lot of pressure on it, not trying to come up with what the offer is or how is it going to make money or how do I get people into it or to know about it. I've just been like, okay, it has a life of its own. And it came through so clearly one weekend of just like, how do you transmit these things that you want to transmit?
Mm,
And through voice felt like the answer.
hmm.
It was like through voice. And I was like, okay. And I started so simply because in the past, I would have wanted to do it perfect or do it right. Or like, maybe I should do video. And how do I put it on YouTube? And do I have the right lighting? And do I have the right equipment? And all of these things. And yet somehow it was like, what if you just record it on your phone on Otter and use ChatGPT to do a summary of it and upload it? And that's what I did.
Amazing.
And I was like, oh,
Amazing. So, what I'm hearing you say is you got out of your own way by
mhm.
releasing the perfectionism and just allowing it to be whatever it is.
It felt so strongly to me that what was coming through was more important than the like perfection of it.
Mm,
It was like, no, it's just like the message, it's the transmission. It was like it could be a little wonky, it could feel a little lispy because you've got your Invisalign in, like all these things, right? And there it was just like, no, the right people who need to hear it will hear it.
mhm. Yeah.
And that's it. And there's like an unattachment.
Oh, and that's the magic, right? The
Mm,
unattachment.
mhm.
That's so good. So if you haven't listened to Mystic Bloom, go give it a listen. I don't want to describe it because it's so big I'd like you to
Mm,
describe it if you don't mind, because
yeah.
I don't want to put it into any cubby.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it has a cubby of its own that it's creating, but in the big space, I want it to be a safe space for spiritual exploration.
Hmm.
And I want it to be a place to ask questions and to discover. And I do a lot of things on feminine embodiment, on mysticism, on Christian mysticism, and allowing there for there to be a place. I like to say, like, there's more to the story,
Mm,
and diving in because I have a very diverse background of like studying religion academically, growing up in the church, studying mysticism and awakening. And there's so many beautiful threads that run through all of them.
hmm.
And so I just wanted to create a place where you didn't have to choose one side or the other, but you could just explore and just
Mm,
listen and be like, wow, what if? Or like maybe learn a little something new and see if it resonates, and if it does, amazing. And if it doesn't, that's okay too. But I just wanted more of the story to be available.
mm, hmm. It's so rich. And so when we talk about the feminine embodiment and
Mhm.
the mysticism and the Christian
Mm.
mysticism, oh my gosh, there's so much beauty and goodness. And I can see the threads that that connect each of those. But for a
Mhm.
listener who's like, I don't understand the connection. Could we start maybe with Christian mysticism, and then we can weave in the mysticism and then maybe finish with embodiment? Would that be okay?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
that's great. And I want to do just say like the umbrella, the overarching part that I think that's happening even on the planet right now is a rebalance of the feminine,
Yes. Hmm.
which is playing into when I talk about Christian mysticism, it's playing into religion.
Yes.
Like even
Hmm.
before a few decades ago, like non-denominational or mega churches, they weren't a thing, right? Like church was a very structured kind of, if you're talking masculine, feminine energies, it
Hmm.
was a very
Hmm.
masculine energy structure, ritual. Here we go, and only lately has it been like, oh, it also could be a place where like the spirit moves you,
Hmm.
or you just come to worship without a lot of creeds or dogmas or lineage.
Hmm.
And that's part of like this feminine rebalancing that's happening on the planet, where we're shifting a little bit from structure to flow
That's right.
and just kind of create, not in a way where we're all flow, but it's coming back into balance so that we can have the healthy doses of both. Because before we were a little over structured.
Yes. And I think we're still, like, my interpretation is we're still in that very masculine structure in our
Yeah.
society, in our culture. And so there's still some room for us to flow within that structure to perhaps soften the edges.
Hmm. Definitely. And so what I love about mysticism, and I like truly love it, is that it's not saying that one is right or one is wrong. It's allowing you to expand beyond the
Mhm.
structures.
Yeah,
And the
I love
structures
that.
still get to be there, but you get to kind of put the hat on of like, oh, okay, these are structures that were created by human beings at a very certain part of history and part of time through a lens that they had. They were trying to create order. They were trying to create like one religion because right after Jesus, it got a little funky and everyone's believing all these different things. And so they were
Hmm.
like, hold on, this is what we believe. Let's make it easy for everybody. Right. And you're like, historically, that's what happened.
That's what
And
happened.
so, yeah, and it's not making it right or wrong. It's like, I'm glad I didn't have to make those decisions.
Oh, me too. Me
Right.
too.
And that's what they thought they had to do to create safety at that time, was to
Hmm.
create structure and to create order. And it worked well for the time that they were in.
That's right.
Now we get to take that. And if we choose, we can stay in the structures because for some, the structures feel really safe.
Hmm.
And that's really helpful for them. They love the structure. Great. For others, we've gotten glimpses of things outside the structures and I go, hold on. I also feel God when I look at the sunset,
Right. Or when I'm walking out in nature.
right? Or look at this flower. How the heck does it know? How does it do that?
That's right.
Right? Like nature is incredible.
Hmm. Or how did that cardinal appear just when I asked for a sign?
right?
Yeah.
And then we get to go, hold on a second. Like there's so many energies and things that weave through. And the
Mhm.
beauty, I think, about Christian mysticism in particular, basically, because that's my lineage, I'm sure there's other lineages here too, is that these energies are there within the structures. You just have to like know where to look for them or look beyond the structures or actually go back to like, wait, what did Yeshua or Jesus, what was he studying? What was he preaching?
Mhm.
Because he was a radical for his time period, going against the structures.
That's right. That's right.
And, so it was like, hold on a second. Like, when you put it in that context, you've got this awakened being walking around with this rule that you can't heal on Sundays, and him going, that makes no sense. This man needs healing. I'm going to go for my heart space.
Mhm.
And
Right.
yeah, right. And so you're like, oh, there's some edge here. Okay, cool. And then you get to go and just dive into some of these stories. And I just love looking at the traditions and even just seeing them differently as human beings. Even Mother Mary, like what faith and devotion to not just like bring a child into the world, but to stand by him as
Mhm.
he's going through this radical awakening, counterculture to the government, watching him getting in more and more trouble, being there when he's killed. Like, wow. And we put it in today's terms of like, I'm not particularly a mother, but you're a mother, and seeing other mothers, you like, wow, you get like a real felt sense
Mhm.
of that love and that devotion. And that's
Yeah.
what I love about mysticism is it kind of cuts through the structures and goes right to the heart, to the energies that you can feel. And those energies that they were feeling then are still alive and available to us today to
That's
tap
right.
into.
That's right. So if somebody listening or somebody listening knows somebody who fears leaving the structure because
Mhm.
there's safety in the dogma, and even just expanding through the structures feels really, really scary or
Mhm.
perhaps against their traditions, what could you say to help them feel safer?
That's a beautiful question. What I would say is that these energies have been around for like since the beginning,
Hmm.
and there is safety in like the words that we put on it. But whether they kind of know it or not, like in the church, there is ritual.
That's right.
In the
That's right.
church, there is belief in these energies, prayer.
That's
And it's
right.
so it's a kind of just a reminder. I was thinking about this today because there's a full moon. And I was
Hmm.
like, oh, there's rituals for the full moon. And I was like, this is so funny because like people in the church have rituals too, right? Oh, it's Easter. Gotta
Hmm.
go.
Hmm.
Whether I believe or not, it's a ritual, whatever. Or like Eucharist and communion, like there's things that are happening. So I would say maybe to not be scared of venturing outside of what they know, and going beyond the known can be scary
Hmm.
in any aspect of our life.
When I was little, like really little, probably under 10, I discovered two books in my grandparents' basement. And they were old books even then. And my grandparents were born in the 19 teens and they had been around for decades. And both were on world religion and trying to understand like the history of all the different deities.
Mm,
And it was very interesting because my grandparents were devout Presbyterians. And so I
mm,
was shocked when I found these in their basement. And so I would sneak down to the basement and I would try to read a little bit. And finally my grandma found me one day and she was like, just bring it up. Let's let's read it. And so the thing that I learned as a very young child is that there are through lines between
mm,
all the major religions where there are similar rituals, where there are similar, not same, but similar stories,
mhm.
similar heroes. Um, I don't know if the hero is the appropriate to say, but
Yeah.
the people that have led other people to feeling better or to being healed. And so I just want to offer that too, that through all
Hmm.
major religions, there's a through line.
Yeah, and I think that's beautiful. And that's what I love about any kind of mysticism or even energetic work is because it allows us to drop underneath some of the rigid differences per se
Mhm. Mhm.
to find the similarities.
That's right. I love that. So how would you distinguish Christian mysticism from mysticism?
I think mysticism in itself is kind of like the belief and more of like the energetic and the transmission. Christian mysticism is that within the Christian tradition. Like
Mm,
I know some really beautiful souls that practice a Jewish mysticism or Islamic mysticism, and those were their kind of lineages that they were raised in. So it's the same, I think, concept, just different
yeah.
cultures,
Yeah, that's
maybe.
right. I love that. That just makes it so simple for people to have a shared language when they're
Yeah,
talking. So by that definition, I guess I would qualify as a mystic,
yeah,
which is
I
kind of
think
like,
you
oh,
would.
cool. I like that. I can get behind
Yeah.
that.
Right? I'll have to find the definition. I found one definition that I really love of a mystic, but it's yeah, it's those who like learn through experience
Hmm.
and connect with like a felt sense,
Hmm. I
which
like
can,
that.
and I think a lot more people are mystics than they realize.
Oh, me too. I mean,
I
that's
know.
really my purpose is to help people unlock that part of themselves, which is why I
Hmm.
love working with empaths because there's something so special about the people who feel so deeply they can feel other people's
Hmm.
feelings.
Yeah, it's really beautiful.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, how does this connect to the feminine embodiment?
Mm, great question. So, feminine embodiment, the way I connect it um, is when we went through organized religion, went through a time of order and patriarchy, right? It just
Hmm.
historically what has
Hmm.
happened. And part of the structure and part of the safety was cutting women off from their sensual and sexual pleasure,
Hmm.
was degrading, making less than.
Right.
And it was part of the culture in the time period that they were living in, which
That's
men
right.
were in power. They just were like,
Hmm. Right. There's no
and
disputing that. That's a
no,
fact. Yeah.
and it's one of these things because I don't want to like man shame, but it's the culture that was running at the time. It's the way things were ordered. It's the
That's right.
systems and the structures that we were living in at that time.
Like patriarchy is a structure, it's a system,
Yeah,
it's not men.
correct. It's
Right.
not men. There are beautiful men. And in fact, men are having an awakening of the feminine within themselves too,
Hmm.
because for very long, they weren't permission to feel these things.
That's right. That's right.
And, like, so it's the energies within both men and women that are now becoming more available. There's more flow, becoming more permissioned, less shame is happening. A lot of shame happened for a lot of years in both men and women
Hmm.
in feelings, in vulnerability, in
Right.
emotionality. We would be called hysteric, right? Like
That's
all
right.
of these things. And so the way that I see it happening with the feminine embodiment and mysticism is part of that coming back to the fullness of humanity.
Mm. Ooh, I'm just letting that land. That feels really good coming back to the
Ugh,
fullness of humanity.
which is meant to be pleasurable. And it doesn't even have to be sensual sexuality in the bedroom pleasure, but be like, oh my gosh, look at this flower. Look at this
Right.
life that we're living.
Right. It
Allowing our emotions, allowing ourselves to cry over a sunset.
Mhm. Allowing ourselves to do the things just because they make us feel good. Or
Yeah,
that's
and
that's
allowing to be
almost
moved.
that's right. Yeah. Permissioning.
Hmm. And it's a lot of
Permissioning.
that permissioning. And so when I think of feminine embodiment, I feel like I was almost cut off like waist down for a long time
Oh, me too.
of growing up in the church and just being like, good, bad, stay in the heart, don't go down there. All of
I'm
these
laughing because I'm like, yeah, me too.
right? And now that I'm waking up to pleasure, I'm like, Oh, or even just like the way like African drum music, I feel it differently because I
Hmm.
can feel it with my whole body.
That's right. That's
And I'm like,
right. And
whoa.
when you look at most of the population in the United States, and I'm going to have that qualifier there, there's very little movement
Hmm.
below the ribs when
Yeah,
we dance. And so that it's part of this cutting off of all of this sensuality, sexuality, creativity, the
yeah.
birthplace of ideas. And I used to be a music teacher.
Ooh.
And I had this lesson where I was teaching a song from the Georgia Sea Islands.
Mhm.
And in researching the song, I learned that moving the hips was so sacred in that
Mm,
part of the world that they found ways on the Georgia Sea Islands as Black Americans to move their hips as
mm.
they made comments about how inappropriate it was to move their hips. And that's how they were able to make it happen. And I'm talking about like in the 1800s, which is
Wow.
so brilliant
Yeah.
that
They were like, don't do this.
don't do this, don't do this move. Let me show you which move. And I think, how divorced we are from our hips, from any pleasure in even that part of the body, even if it's just movement.
From that part of the body in general. I
Hmm.
mean, look at the way that they've had women in the West give birth.
That's
It's
right.
not natural to the way our bodies are meant to move,
No, it's not. It's
but
not.
we've become disconnected with our bodies.
And we've let other people who
Hmm.
aren't in women's bodies tell us how we should be in women's bodies. And that's
Right.
part of this system as well.
Hmm. So to me, it's all a reclamation.
Yeah.
It's like a reclamation, it's a remembering. It's like, oh, actually, I'm a woman in this body and my body does this. Isn't that cool? And
Hmm.
it's not, I don't feel any shame where there was so much shame for so long. And to the point where that's where like a lot of the distortions come, right?
Right.
Or like the rebellion or this or that. It's like, can we move our arms? Can we float like we're in the ocean? Can we dance with the trees? Can we dance in general?
That's right. That's right. So when you became aware of feminine embodiment, and maybe you hadn't heard the word or the words at that time, maybe it was just a beingness. I'm
Mhm.
curious if there was, and I know this is a huge question, so feel free to direct it in any way that feels good, but was there a way that you were able to release shame and allow yourself the embodiment, or was there some kind of light bulb that went off? What was that experience like?
I probably had a different experience than most because it was actually like in an energetic healing session where it was a very safe space and it was permissioned and it was welcomed. And I could feel like this part of my body and my root kind of like open.
Mm,
And when it did, it was actually, I have a very big through line of devotion,
hmm.
and it was in devotion. And
Mm,
it felt a connection to the earth that I've never felt before. It felt connection to the sun that I've never felt before. And so it almost there was a little bit of grieving that I have silenced it for so long that I just didn't know that it was available. And this like celebration of like, wow,
hmm. Yeah.
wow, like this is like my birthright to be able to experience this connection to nature, this connection to my body, this rhythm and this energy that can move all the way through me.
Mm, I love that. I love that.
Mhm.
So many women live in a state where pleasure is okay under certain circumstances with
Mhm.
certain people in certain places. And
Yeah.
and if we live like that, it's almost like we have this little padlock on our pleasure. And it's so much more expansive when we can allow the pleasure to come from any source.
From any source and be ours and ours alone.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. I remember,
it's
and
not for anyone else.
that's right. I remember a really powerful statement that you had us do at one of the retreats that I've been at several retreats with you,
Mhm.
and I remember you encouraging us to claim our pleasure,
Mhm.
that it's really not for anyone else.
Mhm.
And in this context, just for the listener that's getting curious, we were in a big room with couches and beautiful rugs, and there was a fire in the fireplace, and we were standing in a circle, and we were just talking about what it's like to be a woman, a fully
Mhm.
embodied woman. And
Mhm.
it was that simple and yet that powerful.
And it's beautiful. We just don't give ourselves the spaces a lot, right? Which
Right.
is one of the reasons I love the feminine embodiment space, or even just being in a group of women together. Because I've
Hmm.
heard so many people say, like, I've never thought about that. And these are women of all ages who've been on
Right.
this planet for decades.
Hmm.
And it was like, oh, wow. It was always like an act with someone else or for someone else. And again, going back to like, oh my gosh, just feeling the beauty of a flower
Hmm.
and going, wow, I feel that through my whole body. Like, this is incredible.
Feeling and allowing it to
Hmm.
move through your whole body too. Or,
Hmm.
yeah, I think that again, there's an allowing piece.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for the listener that's like, okay, this sounds pretty good. And I'm curious, but this is really far out of anything I've ever done or tried. What would a first step or two be toward claiming their feminine embodiment?
Put on a sexy song by yourself is
Mm,
my first. You know what I'm talking about?
I do.
Yeah, if you get in the mood and you're just in your own room, you're in your own space, maybe you're in the backyard, give yourself the permission. And it might seem scary, but what is it going to be? 3 or 5 minutes and no one's watching,
That's right.
right? And 3 or 5 minutes, and really just like allow yourself to feel like how juicy can you make it? Like, can you just be in your own pleasure and no one else's? You don't have to care what it looks like or what it feels like. Just
How do you
be.
want to move? What would
Yeah.
feel so good?
What would feel
How,
so good?
yeah. Oh, I love that. So I have like this whole playlist. It's called my High Vibes playlist. And I wouldn't say that there's many sexy songs on there because mostly it's about like, let's get out of the funk and let's feel better.
Mhm.
But there's a few of them I just love. And I'm curious, do you have a few favorite songs that you can recommend for people?
Um, oh gosh, I'll get back to you on a playlist. But there's
Okay.
definitely sounds, and if you look on like Spotify, you can search feminine embodiment, or you can search like feminine feel good, yummy. You know what I mean? Like you can, because I love the ones that are also sung by women that
Me
are
too.
empowering, like the I Am Woman
Yes.
song.
Hmm.
I love that one. There's some from Beyonce that just feel like you're reclaiming your power, but in it you can move your hips and you're like, yeah, all my power, right? And like,
That's right.
yeah,
I love it. I love it. And I'll link my playlist there too in the show notes so
yeah.
we can
I
share
and
a
I
couple
have one on
playlists.
Spotify under my name that has feminine embodiment
I
too.
think I have your playlist.
Yeah, yeah. So, and I keep adding things to it because I keep finding songs that I'm like, ooh, that's a good one.
That's like, oh, I love it. I'm going to have to tap back into that.
Yeah.
So when we think about feminine embodiment or the divine feminine,
Mhm.
sometimes people I've heard in spaces say, well, what about masculine embodiment? Is that a thing?
Right.
And
Yeah.
it is a thing.
It is a thing. I think it's very much a thing. It's a thing. I'm in a woman's body this
Hmm.
lifetime.
Hmm.
So this is kind of what I'm working with. But there definitely is masculine embodiment. And it's different too. There's in male bodies,
Hmm.
right? And then there's masculine embodiment within the female body.
That's right. Yeah.
And a lot of us, it's almost like a fish in water though, because that's what we've been raised in.
Hmm.
A
Yes.
lot of the structures, right? A lot of the like rigid, yes, no, do this. Like women right now are so independent. We are so efficient. like we can run circles around people. You know what I mean? Like we've gotten really good.
Oh, we've mastered the masculine energy of get it done.
Yep.
Let's hustle, let's make it faster, more efficient.
Yeah. And providing that safety and clarity and structure for others
That's
too.
right. That's right. So I remember I was absolutely in my distorted masculine for years. I
Mm,
was all about the work. And even when I was in partnership with men, it was very difficult for me to allow myself
mm,
to receive, whether that was kindness or support or help or pleasure, because I sort of felt like I was the one that needed to do it. I
mhm,
needed to get it done. There was like um, some kind of a hustle box I was checking. Like it needs to be done by me. And because that's the way it's going to be done best. And as I untangled from that, there was a moment where it felt like I was letting go of the monkey bars,
mm,
because there was this moment feeling like, what if no one catches me? What if it really was true that I was the only one who could do this? And it was really scary. And
mm.
I'm wondering, have you heard of that in other people too? Is that a common experience?
It is a common experience. And I'm going to relate it back to the religion conversation we were happening because this happens a lot in what I like to call the God wound too. It's
Mm,
like when we have some kind of wound with what we believe to be the ideal father or the masculine that always has us. And
mm,
sometimes there's a rupture and they don't. And honestly, most of the time it's a human being who just hasn't, no faults of theirs. They haven't mastered this human life. Like
like the
who
rest of us
has?
have.
Yeah, who has? But there maybe wasn't a repair, or there maybe wasn't an
Mhm,
understanding conceptually of what was happening going on. Or maybe it was in childhood. Like for me, it was as simple as I love my parents dearly, and I'm the oldest of there's three of us. And my mom was really sick when my she had my youngest sister. And so I grew up a little too fast. I
mm,
took on, no one told me.
right.
I took on more responsibility. And I started getting praised for that responsibility and for the doing instead of the
Hmm.
being, and for
Hmm.
being a helper instead of a little girl.
That's right. Yeah.
And off we went, and I didn't unravel it for 35 years.
Oh,
Like,
same. Same. Literally, I was 35 when I got divorced. And that was
wow.
many years ago. But there was something that happened at that 35 where I was like, I literally can't do this anymore.
Yeah. And these are patterns that are running that we aren't aware of.
Right. You're not aware of them until you finally one day are like, wait, I'm doing this in every area of my
Mhm.
life. Who's the common denominator?
Right?
Oh, wait, it's me.
It's me. Like I loved being that little girl doing all the things when I was 7, and yet here I am still being hyper masculine, controlling situations. I got it, super independent,
Hmm. Hmm.
and at the same time wanting a divine masculine partner to come in.
Yeah,
But
my
there's
hands
no
up.
room for that when I'm playing both. Like,
That's right. How can you find a partner when you're doing both roles?
right.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm talking to myself right now. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Because
get it.
my go-to, if I get triggered or scared or tired, my go-to is to flip back into that doing.
Right. And it's a balance, right? Because we can go hyper masculine and be the doing.
Hmm.
And sometimes the other end of the spectrum, and these, when we talk about embodied masculine, maybe those who want to work on embodied masculine are the hyper feminine,
Hmm.
might have a little collapse.
Right.
And we can oscillate between the two I can very easily,
Oh,
where I'm
same.
like, I got everything together. I'm a collapse mess. I have all the needs. And it's like, how do we find the balance and the harmony to know, like, oh, we both have both, and we have this beautiful toolkit of life around us that we get to like flow through and play with.
Yeah. I love that. So if somebody's like, okay, I want to play around with these energies, are there
Mhm.
some things they could do to practice that are kind of low stakes?
Yeah. I would say for anyone who wants to work just on like for those of us, me included, that are the hyper masculine, I think that working on receiving
Mm.
is really big,
Hmm.
and just paying attention. Like if someone offers to pay for your coffee, do you say no? If
Mm-hmm.
someone offers to go get the mail, do you say, I got it? You know, like all these little things
Mm-hmm.
that are just like, and like, how do we, because it's those little micro moments
That's right.
that we start to break the habits and we start to become more aware because often the words are little, but the energy is big,
Mm. I love that. The words are little, but the energy is big.
right? If someone offers to do something for, or you offer to do something for someone and they go, no, I got it.
Mm-hmm.
Like little and a little like, oh, okay. There's an energetic exchange that just happened. And maybe you
Right.
back away, or maybe you're not going to offer the same thing next time, or there's an imprint.
Mm-hmm.
And so we get to like watch how we move through the world in that
Mm.
way.
I love that. So work on your ability to receive. And I think that,
Mm-hmm.
compliments fall into that. What
Oh,
would it be
yeah.
like if you just said thank you for a compliment instead of saying anything else? Just try thank
Mm-hmm.
you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember having to work through that at a different point in life where I would over explain something or I would downplay.
Or justify it, or just, oh, yeah, you like explain it away.
Right. Or it's
Yeah.
just whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's so good. Oh my gosh. So, what's next for you? What's on the horizon?
That's a great question. Um, I think I'm continuing to be in this exploration of what does Mystic Bloom want to become,
Mhm. Mhm.
and really kind of providing a safe space for spiritual exploration and the questions and the dancing um, and the embodiment piece of creating containers and spaces where you can just be with yourself,
Mhm.
pleasure or not, just to have no one else's needs grabbing onto you, to like remember who you are
Mm.
is something that I love.
And you're so gifted at teaching it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mm.
Yeah. Where can people find you?
I'm on Instagram. I have a Mystic Bloom website. My personal one's kind of like it's a work in progress, as am I. That's another thing. It felt like a very kind of masculine thing to be like, pick a niche, stick to it, do this thing in business. And I'm like, but I'm a butterfly. Like I'm constantly evolving. So I'm just letting myself fly for a little bit and we see what happens.
Oh, I love that so much. Mystic Bloom, Mystic, Mystic
Mm-hmm.
Bloom.
Mystic Bloom. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. Jenny, thank you so much for being
Oh,
here today.
thank you. Thanks for instigating these conversations and serving people in the way that you do. It's so powerful.
Oh, thank you.
Mm.
I hope you loved that conversation as much as I did. One of the things that I so appreciate about Jenny is how she can break down the concepts of spirituality and separate them from the dogma of religion. Not that there's anything wrong with religion, but I think that there are so many people who are craving connection with the divine and they don't feel that their path is in a traditional church. Whether or not that's you, I hope that this episode has empowered you to look deeper into your own beliefs, your traditions, your practices. And I hope that you will find yourself allowing and seeking pleasure in all things. And I hope that this episode will guide you toward deeper embodiment. This week we talked about the feminine embodiment. And next week, just to keep things in balance, we're going to be talking about the masculine embodiment as I host Kevin McKee on the podcast. And be sure that you're following me on Instagram at Brenda Winkle because Jenny and Kevin and I are going to have a conversation with the three of us on Instagram at some point in the coming weeks where you can ask questions about the intersection of the divine feminine and the divine masculine. Remember, the masterclass, Boundaries That Energize You and Bring Balance to Your Life, is coming up on Wednesday, December 4th at 9 a.m. Pacific. And you can register and learn more by going to brendawinkle.com/. boundaries. This is a great chance to set some boundaries around your time, your energy, your bandwidth, and carve out a little piece of time just for you. Thank you so much for listening to Your Yes Filled Life. If you found this episode helpful or supportive, would you please consider sharing it with a friend? And if you wouldn't mind, if you could leave the podcast a rating and review, it would mean so much towards getting the podcast into the ears of more listeners just like you who are looking for their own yes filled life. Thank you so much for listening. Bye for now. Until next time.